Middle bottom.
Yep. Hey, how is it going, everybody? I am here with the one and only Rich Lescouflair, and we are going to hear all about his career in tabletop gaming. I'm super, super excited. I'm James Introcaso. Welcome to Tabletop Voices. We're going to be taking questions from all of you later on, so get ready for that as well. Feel free to type out questions in the chat as they come up, and we'll have Rich answer them later on. So as we get down to it, Rich, will you please introduce yourself and tell the people what you have made for tabletop RPGs?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I am, I guess, the one and only Rich Lescouflair. There doesn't seem to be any others in the phone book. Pretty long last name. I have created a few things. Currently, I am one of the Dungeon Masters Guild Adepts, along with the incomparable James Introcaso here. I've made products for that, for primarily the Mesro series, and have the Encounters books. We've actually worked on a whole ton of stuff together. On the side, I am also the lead designer for Alligator Alley Entertainment. We have produced the first of 3 core books, with 2 more on the way for Esper Genesis. That is the sci-fi RPG, the heroic sci-fi RPG for 5th edition. And in addition to those 3 books, we have a whole slew of adventures and products and everything else on the way. Let's see. I'm kind of going back and forth over here. I have also written a few adventures for D&D Adventurers League. I was one of the 3 that had written for Involo's Wake, and I also had the wonderful opportunity to write the intro to Season 7.
Awesome. Yeah, that is a great adventure, and we are going to dive into all of those things. But first, take me all the way back, Rich. When did you first lay hands on a tabletop role-playing game, and what were you playing?
Well, so I've told the story before. I was actually on the lunch line in junior high, and this kid had leaned over my shoulder and had flicked the guy in front of me in the ear really hard. And that guy turned around and immediately punched me in the face.
Oh my God.
It's a good start, right? So the 2 of us got in trouble for fighting. Our next period was gym class, and we were not allowed to participate. So we were sitting down in the bleachers the entire class, and he sat around 1 row in front of me, and I looked down, and he was reading this book. It was the D&D. It was the Basic Rules, the D&D Basic box set, the player's book. So I looked over, and I was like, hey, you know what? I had no grudge against this guy. I said, hey, man, what's that? And he turned around and looked at me, and his eyes widened at this shock and amazement that I was actually interested in what he was holding, and sat down next to me and started explaining, he's like, it's like choose your own adventure, but this, but that, and then loaned me the books, and that was my first tabletop RPG.
Wow, that has to be one of the best stories about getting involved in tabletop RPGs. I especially love that you said, I had no grudge against this guy, and he had punched you in the face. That, I think, goes to show Rich Lescouflair's attitude about life, because you are super busy, but you're also, super calm all the time. How do you achieve that zen?
Only on camera. No, I just my fiance actually keeps me calm most of the time. She has the unfortunate experience of me venting my my frustrations to her when when I get really busy. That's kind of what we do as a favor to each other. And but yeah, there have been when it really comes down to it, I'm doing something that in the end I enjoy doing. A lot of things you can't let a lot of things get to you anyway. That's kind of the way life is. Life is always gonna throw you those curves, and if it's gonna happen anyway, you might as well take it in stride and continue doing something you enjoy.
Very true, and it's certainly true in the tabletop gaming industry. I'm wondering, when did you make the shift from player to paid professional working on RPG material?
That happened only a couple of years ago, actually. Not actually, about 2.5 years ago. I was playing at my local gaming store, and the owner there, Brian, he is he's actually one of the board members of the Game Manufacturers Association. So he just took a look at my stuff because I was running a D&D game there, and he's like, "What are you running?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm running this module that I built for 5th edition." He looked down at it and he said, "What is that?" He's like, is that a 5e book? I'm like, "Nope, I built this in Word." And he looked at me, he's like, "You built that in Word?" I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "All right, I need to talk to you." So he introduced me to a whole bunch of different people. I ended up taking a job from Henry Lopez, who was converting the Arcanist role-playing game to 5e at the time. So that was my first foray into it. Did some of that. I got hired by a couple of other people to do maps for them, and I just started branching out into whatever I could to get work while I was building my own stuff. And eventually I met you guys.
What was that Word document like? What was the content? What was the story of that adventure?
It was actually, I was talking to you about it recently. It was actually the first adventure of the Demon Bane Chronicles, which was it was a campaign that I ran when I was a teenager, and way back in the day, and I had it had carried on for so long. I decided that I would just put it together into a story. There was a lot of story, a lot of background, a lot of elements behind it, and I said this would look great as a 5th edition book. So I did not own Adobe Creative Cloud at the time, so all I had was Word, and I just kind of built every single 5e element that I could find and put it into a Word document so that it looked and felt exactly like a 5e product.
Rich, you have taught yourself Adobe Creative Cloud, and that's one of the things, reasons I'm sort of shocked to hear that you've only been doing it 2.5 years, because you can not just design adventures really well and monsters and class options and that sort of thing. You also are great at layout. You are great at creating maps. Is that all stuff that you are self-taught? And is that all stuff that you are self-taught within the last 2.5 years for?
Pretty much, yeah. Everything that I do that you see in any of my adventures and my mods, I taught myself, with the exception of InDesign. InDesign took a little bit of initial help and coaxing from my friend Brian. He showed me a lot of tips and tricks that he knew, and then I took them and I implemented them into what I was already working on. Because InDesign is a pain in the butt. But yeah, everything else, the Photoshop and Illustrator and Premiere Pro and all that stuff, and the mapping software, it was just me plugging away and practicing until I got it.
Wow, what do you use to make your maps?
Primarily, I use Campaign Cartographer, or Campaign Cartographer Plus now. it's called, and it's by Pro Fantasy. It's wonderful software. I'm actually taking a look at also Dungeon Fog, which was a Kickstarter that had come out earlier this year, actually, and that's also amazing software. I'm gonna try and see if I can implement that in my map making when I have time to make maps, which is very limited. But it's really cool.
So I want to dive in a little bit and talk about Esper Genesis because
Okay.
I think that is a huge development. It is well, I'll let you tell people, what is Esper Genesis?
Okay. Esper Genesis is a heroic science fiction setting for 5th edition. It has an entirely new galaxy, new races, a whole new meta story and storyline. Everything is built into keeping the fast and steady pace that's 5e, that makes it fun and easy to use, and bringing it into a completely different science fiction setting where even though it feels like 5e, the entire game itself is different. We have different rules for zero gravity combat and automatic weapons and vehicles and starships and things that are you look at them and you say, oh, this is 5e, but it's still also brand new. And we also wanted to make it extremely customizable and compatible with every other 5th edition book, because it's a galaxy. You can run into anything. So we created the system to where, sure, you still have all the new races and the new class options, but you can pick up any 5e book from anywhere and plug it right in, and it'll work.
So we're talking, if I want to use a class from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, I can use that without changing anything other than maybe the flavor of it to fit a science fiction setting.
Yes. Well, and of course, if it's a spellcasting class, you have to implement your magic and your magical spells and how all of that functions. But all of that should be in whatever book that you're using. The universe itself is built around the meta story. There are artifacts in space called the Crucibles, and they generate an infinite power source that the people of the galaxy use for faster than light travel. They use it to power cities and power weapons, and the core generates this material that over time, over generations, certain special people began to attune to, and they themselves began exhibiting abilities such as control of light, control of gravity, mastery over the elements, the ability to shift one form of matter to the next, and that's what Espers are. So you have an effect, kind of like a magical system, in a sci-fi version. It's a little different. The rules, some of the rules are a little different, but it's the same enough to where you can take any spellcasting class from anywhere, or any class with any special class features from anywhere, and pop it into the system. So if you want your barbarian to hop into the cockpit of a space fighter and take on some guys, then then no problem.
I do want that. I want that quite a bit. I'm wondering what was that like then? We're talking about designing, keeping everything in 5th edition and then designing a whole game and universe on top of that. A lot of times when people hack 5th edition, it's like, okay, we're pulling this out, or this is never going to work, and we're adding these attributes, or we're adding this system or whatever. What was it like to design for a system that had to go hand in hand with 5th edition?
harder than I thought it would be. No, some things obviously were fairly simple. If you pull what 5e gives you out of the SRD, then you have a baseline to work from. And the thing about 5th edition, people like to deconstruct it and rebuild it from the bottom up, and I'm like, well, then it's not 5e anymore, it's something else. Every single time you make a new rule, or every single time you make a new function, a new class feature, a new anything, especially when we were making the species and the races and now the threats, because we have the threats database coming out. The cardinal rule that we told ourselves is, okay, can I see myself encountering this in a D&D game? Can I see myself doing this in a 5e game? Does this make things more simple or more complicated? Is there something where we can use advantage or disadvantage instead of mucking up, or creating more rules? That's pretty much the way that we had to do it, step by step.
So when you talk about anything in 5e can go in there, obviously we mean anything, but what is the setting itself like? Are we talking about goblins in space and orcs in space and elves in space, or is it a totally new thing?
Yeah, no, it's a totally new thing. The galaxy is actually our galaxy, so Earth is also there. And it is centuries in the future where humans, who are now just one of the many species that are in the galaxy, have joined a collective of major species, and all of these spacefaring races use the crucibles to travel faster than light from one point to another. So there's an entirely new there are no elves, there are no goblins. All of the races and species are all brand new, including the player ones. There are 9 completely new ones, and we also have quite a few that are getting introduced in the threats database that eventually we also want to make into player races.
That's awesome. That's really cool that you've essentially gone in and created your own mythos and your own creatures, and it also helps, I think, set it apart from a setting like Starfinder, where it is goblins and orcs and other critters we're used to in fantasy in space, right? That's really, really cool.
I'm sorry. We wanted to avoid doing that. We wanted to... I'm a very big sci-fi fan. So, my favorite sci-fis are, Star Wars as far as the movies, and my favorite sci-fi-ish video game was Phantasy Star and Mass Effect and things like, and they have their own feel that's not remotely fantasy, really. And we wanted to do that, so we made things that are modern day, cities and star bases, mega corporations that secretly control the lives of billions of people across the galaxy.
I was wondering too if you could talk a little bit about Esper Genesis's spaceship vehicle rules, because I often find in a sci-fi game, when we get into those vehicular confrontations, what happens is it's like, oh, finally, the guy who built the pilot is able to, for the next 2 hours, use their character to maximum effect, and nobody else does anything, and then for the next 3 sessions, the pilot doesn't do anything again until the spaceship combat comes up. And I think you all have solved that. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that system a little bit.
Sure. So what we did is we took the ground combat of D&D 5e, and we just expanded it out into space. So every single member of the party or the squad or the group or whichever you want to call it also, immediately becomes the crew. So there are two different types of space combat. There's a single pilot, in your starfighter, and then there's a multi-crew ship. Each ship has its role. Maybe I should specify. Okay, so every ship has its base stats. Mm-hmm. So you have a base stat regardless of if you have a small fighter or you have a large starship. They're all going to have something base to apply to, and then every single member of the crew or every single party member has a role, such as a pilot, an engineer, a gunner, a co-pilot, and the like. I'm sorry, a technician. For larger ships, we also have roles like captain and things like that. Once the roles are chosen on the ship stats get modified by the stats of the characters that are taking on the roles. So, the pilot will increase the ship's armor class and defense rating. The technician will increase the structural integrity and the shields of the ship. The gunners obviously make the guns go boom a little more. and are far more accurate. The way the combat itself works is that the crew all goes at a single initiative point. So the ship has its initiative, the enemies have their initiative. The crew decides what they're going to do. Each crew member has a different set of maneuvers based on their roles. So the pilot can say, I'm going to take evasive maneuvers, and the technician's like, well, that's going to cause the gunners to just their aim's going to be thrown off. So I'm going to boost the sensors so that they don't lose accuracy with the guns. Or if the ship is damaged, I'm going to repair it. And the gunners have options like I'm going to aim for a particular system, or we're going to dual fire, or there are a lot of different options that we made sure that everybody has something to do, and it can be different every single round.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it, to give variety, to give everybody sort of a special role, is essentially how D&D combat works outside of a vehicle. So to bring that in then is a great way to do spaceship combat. Shifting gears a little bit, you've also worked for the Adventurers League. How did you get started writing for them?
I actually went to Gamma a couple of years ago, and I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, start there. I'm not gonna, I went to Gamma a few years ago when I was first meeting industry people, and I found out that Mike Merles was doing a talk there, and I was like, oh man, Mike Merles, I gotta go see Mike Merles. I gotta go meet him. And so, sat there, went through his talk, and I was holding my iPad with my 5th edition thing inside of it, and I'm like, I'm just gonna be shameless and go and introduce myself. And so I walked up at the end. We talked about a lot of stuff. This was like before Rage of Demons even came out, and I showed him, and he's like, we shared, information, and he asked me, hey, you're interested in writing for D&D? And I was like, yeah, that wasn't like a job offer or anything. He was just asking me out of curiosity. And so that was that. I had, emailed him, thanked him, and I had run into a couple of other people that had worked in WotC at the time. And then a few months later, I got an email asking if I wanted to be part of a team to write In Volo's Wake. And so I'm figuring, maybe that had come from Mike. I thanked him either way. He's a wonderful guy, and I always appreciate the fact that he gave me the opportunity to jump into this. This is, one of the things that has actually changed my entire aspect of what I do for a living. So that's my story on that.
Talk a little bit more about that. How has your life changed since you've been involved in role-playing games, employment-wise?
The downside is I get to play a lot less. but but the cool part is I have always wondered, about the game industry itself. It's something that I had tried to do for a long time. I had submitted articles and things like that to TSR way back in the day, and and stories and such. And it was always something that I wanted to get into. When I saw the DMs Guild come up, and I was like, yes, that is cool. This is something that I do for a hobby anyway. I'm just gonna jump in and create something and see. It wasn't even about making money, or anything like that at the point. I just wanted people to see my stuff, and sure. I think that's what it is for a lot of creators that write on DMs Guild, and we've seen quite a few of them, come out, and they put out amazing things. So that was nice. I wanted to be a part of that. And when going into writing Adventurers League, that's when I actually started to meet a lot of people on the AL side, and I realized, wow, what a wonderful group of people this is. You guys are amazing. Always willing to help, always open to talk, and it's given me a lot of inspiration and a lot of courage in a sense to jump in and do things like Esper Genesis, where hey, all right, this is a massive project. I want to present it to someone. I'm going to do it. And that wouldn't have happened without me getting into meeting everyone and writing for AL.
Yeah, definitely. And you are, I can say this, I work with you as a guild adept. You are like the unsung hero of the guild adepts. So not only are you laying out 99% of the projects that have come through there, you are also just incredibly creative and smart and well-read and on time, and it's just a pleasure to work with you. And so I'm really glad that you went to Gamma and talked to Mike Merles, because here we are and I get to work with you, which is pretty great. What was one of the first things you put on the DMs Guild?
It was a product called Heroes of the Sundered Realms, which eventually became the Sundered Realms Player's Guide. And it's another project that is now sitting on the back burner until I have time to pick it back up again. So everyone started writing like character options, and they started writing adventures, and I'm going to write here, I'm going to write in Sword Coast, I'm going to do something for that. And I looked over at so I have the Old Forgotten Realms Atlas, the like brown one from second edition, the Ed Greenwood one, and I was looking at the map, and I was like, there's all these continents here, no one's doing anything with them. It's like a whole planet over here. So I emailed Matt, and I said, hey, there's all these continents here that are empty, no one's ever done anything with them. There are no stories. There's no nothing with them. Are we able to do anything with this? And he sent me a response, and it said, all of the Forgotten Realms are open. I said, okay, great.
Sure.
So, so I took it. I drew a map, built a campaign setting around it, and I called it the Sundered Realms. And it's about what happened to this continent. It's one of the ones that had disappeared during the 4E days, during the spell plague, and then suddenly reappeared again afterwards. And I was like, what happened during that time? So I wrote a campaign around it. I made the first adventure, which I call it's called the Iron Bastion, which was the second thing I put out on DMs Guild. And then after that, I started doing the AL thing, and I just never had time to go back to it.
Yeah, well, I'd love to see the conclusion of that someday. When you get copious amounts of free time, I'm sure. What would you say you are most proud of all of your products?
Out of Oh, out of my products?
Out of anything you've ever worked on.
I would have to put that squarely on the Esper Genesis core manual right now. That is probably the coolest thing that I thought I would ever experience when I actually saw it in my hands. I was like, wow, this thing looks amazing. It looks like a book I would buy off the shelf. And it has, other people are playing and they're really excited about it and they're messaging me and they're asking me all these questions and they're, when are you coming out about this? And they start asking me about the setting, and it's a wonderful feeling. Yesterday, Robert Aducci, he now works for us as our community manager. So he had just started putting out stuff, and he messaged me with a link. And he's like, yeah, there's this Esper Genesis podcast in the UK. And I'm like, what? So I hit it.
That's a great feeling.
UK guys playing Esper Genesis. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. This is, it's a wonderful feling. So
well, it's an incredible book, and the art is amazing. I wonder too, did you have anything to do with the look of the book, not just the words, right?
Yeah. The general look and feel and style is pretty much put together by all of my favorite stuff. So yes, you'll see a little bit of Star Wars. You'll see a whole lot of Mass Effect in the art, and some Ghost in the Shell on the way. And I was like, what's the best way of taking all of my favorite stuff and mashing it together and not having it look silly? And this is kind of what we came up with. I met an artist named Santi Casas. He's in Spain, and he did our first couple of pieces for us. Yeah, he just kind of, he and I just clicked, and he knew, pretty much what I was looking for, sent me a couple of pieces. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Let's just draw everything else like this. I actually consider myself extremely lucky that that was probably the art was probably the easiest thing to put together for the game.
Yeah, definitely. That's crazy. Because it is so beautiful. It is such an amazing book, and people should definitely check it out. How long does it take to put together something like that, start to finish, especially for somebody like you who is working on it pretty much from the beginning to the end? Because you can do everything, you end up doing everything.
That's a tough question. I'm not gonna take credit. Sorry for the layout, of the book. Mm-hmm. Even though I do a lot of layout work, I sort of put the base together as far as how I wanted things to look. But it's really Brian Dalrymple who does our graphic designer for Alligator Alley. He put together that amazing layout for the core manual. The nice thing is that I get to go to where Brian physically is and sit down next to him. So I'm able to just crank out text and here it is, and he'll just plug it into, and I'm putting together the text in like a pre-layout format. So he already knows everything, what it's going to look like. He puts it into his frame, and it all just blends together. And he puts in his artifacts, and I would imagine that the core manual would have taken a lot longer if we weren't able to do that. So, and it took us a year and a half just to get that together.
Yeah, I believe it. It is, like I said, it's massive and beautiful. When you are thinking about the tabletop role-playing game industry, what hopes do you have for the future of the industry, both personally and sort of on a grander global scale?
I want... Well, actually, one of the things that I always hoped to happen for tabletop has already started happening. Back when I was young, it was kind of hard to convince people what tabletop role playing does for everyone. Now kids are getting into it. I'm introducing it to to my family, and it's one of those things that creates automatically, just by its very nature, camaraderie and a sense of self-worth, and you learn how to think for yourself and solve problems, and there are a whole bunch of different aspects that come together from tabletop RPGs. Now, all I want to do is have that spread when people can work together and get along and do something fun, the world is always better, and that's what I want for the tabletop RPG community, to expand out to all different horizons. Right now, online is really popular. I'm sorry, online gaming is extremely popular. So, D&D is branched out into D&D Beyond, and you have Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds and all of these things. So now, that aspect of tabletop RPG that used to just be confined to your table, now you can spread all of that good-natured stuff out to anybody in the world anywhere, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's great, and it's a great way to think about RPGs as a medium, right? That they're able to really bring people together, and I do see that happening as well, and I'd love to see it go further. I have a ton of friends that I've made because of this. What do you think? How much do you think going to conventions has helped your RPG career?
Tons. Well, obviously there was that first one.
Right.
But yeah, it's really nice. Even when you're working with people that are further away. Like when I first worked on Invola's Wake, I worked with Monica Valentinelli and Sean Merwin. Both extraordinarily wonderful people that I've never met before, and it was really nice to meet them. And it was, but when I started working with more people, there's just something, that's wonderful about, meeting people in person, and you get insight into what they know, what they feel, how they view the tabletop RPG industry, and it, it can sometimes give you ideas that you can incorporate. And when you talk back and forth with people like that, you're like, yeah, and you get this I want to do this. You get this drive that's wonderful at conventions, because everyone gets together and everyone's there to communicate about these things and have a great time.
How is it that on the idea of collaboration what is the best way to collaborate with people? Because I think sometimes when you get a bunch of people who are used to running their own games and writing their own products in a room, it can get like, well, my idea is the best idea and I need to defend it and that sort of thing. How do you work together with so many forceful, creative people coming at it all at once?
Argue until they give up. No, I mean, no, you don't. Really, I'll be perfectly honest. The best thing to have already is a team that is ready to collaborate. You have to identify who's willing to work with you, who's willing to just work for themselves, and you gravitate to who is going to provide input and suggestions, and you always want to be willing to listen, and not just listen as in they give you your ideas and you're listening to them. You also want to present your ideas in a way that is going to work with theirs, and you have to establish that understanding. That's what creates great collaborative work. Everyone has to understand that they're there to work together, and they're there to make everyone else's work better.
you've designed adventures now to go along with a lot of different Wizards of the Coast hardcover books. You've put stuff on the Guild and worked with the Adventurers League on Tomb of Annihilation and Volo's Guide to Monsters and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and Waterdeep. Do you have a favorite book that you've designed for so far?
No.
Well,
I have had the most fun so far working on Tomb of Annihilation because that's what I've worked on the most. I was able to actually create a whole trilogy of adventures, and in addition, I had time to work on stuff like the Encounters books and work with Reed Rutenberg on the side classes. Probably the most my favorite that I am working on is Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Mm-hmm. We put out some adventures for that. I definitely have some plans for that type of thing in the future, which I may have mentioned to you. It is my favorite. It is my favorite thing. Well, maybe my second favorite thing ever in D&D is that type of expanded, storyline and setting and all the different natures of the fascinating monsters of the plains and things like that. That's one of the things I enjoy doing.
Have you ever run a campaign where you're like jumping through portals to go to different worlds or getting on a spell jamming ship or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. I've run two very, very long running campaigns through the plains, and what makes it great is actually the same thing that I tried to implement into Esper Genesis. It's so vast that you can go anywhere and run into anything, and it frees your imagination to come up with all types of amazing things that you wouldn't have thought of before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, Rich, as we're winding up here, what advice do you have for people who want to do what you do?
The best advice I can give is to keep doing it. The start, don't stop. If you get frustrated, but it's something that you enjoy doing, just keep going, keep releasing stuff, keep advertise yourself. Tell everybody, hey everybody, take a look at this. This is what I did. What do you think? And be prepared for what they tell you, because whatever they tell you, you can use to improve. And whatever you put out next is always going to be better. That's really all it is. Just start and keep going and don't stop.
It's great advice. Practice definitely makes perfect. And also not comparing yourself to anybody other than yourself, I think, is a good way to go too. Don't put yourself in secret competition with people, right? Because then you're only driving yourself nuts.
I agree. The industry is not. It is not a competition at all. Everyone is here to make something cool and have fun playing, and you're doing it for them as much as they're doing it for you. That's how the industry should be.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, Rich, you're an amazing human, an amazing designer, and amazing all around at a bunch of good stuff. If people want to get in touch with you, where should they go and what should they do?
You can find me in a few places. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me by messaging the Alligator Alley Entertainment page. I can also be found at Skydod1, which is right there below my little frame there on Twitter. Or you can go to the espergenesis.com or the Alligator Alley Entertainment.com website and fill out the contact page if you have any questions, and it usually comes to me directly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, man. For viewers out there, don't forget to subscribe to the Encounter Roleplay Twitch channel to get more great content like this. And we're also going to be releasing a podcast feed on Don't Split the Podcast Network, so you can check that out soon at don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com. I'm James Introcaso. Thank you very much to Sydney and Will and everybody at Encounter Roleplay for putting together this stream. Join us next week, where my guest will be Emily Reinhardt, and we're going to talk a lot about magical girls. So get ready and get excited for that. Thank you all so much, everybody. Be super good and be super great. I'll see you later.
Thanks, everyone.